Hello, welcome to Maison Otaku. Come in, have a seat.
I'm Justin.
And I'm Mike.
And I'm back. And I only was away for about a week, but good reason to be away. I was celebrating my first anniversary, and Mike was celebrating ColossalCon.
Yep.
Important note, if you didn't catch Mike's episode, he actually talked about what is probably one of the most interesting things in science fiction.
Oh, definitely.
When he brought up his poster, that was in the legendary Carl Masik's collection of Lensmen. Now, Mike did a great job talking about Masik. We need to talk more about Masik, and we will talk more about Masik.
Infinitely.
But you didn't bring up something important about Lensmen itself, did you?
No, yeah, I did kind of gloss over that. It was a mini-sode after all.
Yeah. What's big to bring up about Lensmen is there's an anime of Lensmen, there were comics of Lensmen, but Lensmen began life as a series of light novels.
Yep. And
from this series of light novels, we got the idea of the space cop. Without Lensmen, you don't get Green Lantern, you don't get Dirty Pear.
You don't even get Mihoshi.
You don't get Mihoshi, which would devastate my life. You cannot take away Lensmen from popular fiction. It is that important. Mm-hmm. It's right up there with Tarzan, Robinson Crusoe, Last of the Mohicans, and...
Or as we discussed, Starship Troopers.
Starship Troopers. It's just that critical. And we like to believe that Carl Masik understood...
Oh, without a doubt.
...just the importance to fiction as a whole concept, that something so classic still resonated with an international audience. Mm-hmm. And speaking of things that really resonate, that brings us to a bit of news that you've discovered.
Yes, now we move on to the news. As you probably guessed right now, we really like the new company Discotek.
Great folks, great guys.
They get it. They're basically making the company that I would if I won the lottery. And two bits of news from them. First, they actually announced that they are going to rescue the license for Super Dimension Century Orgus.
Orgus is fantastic. It's another one of that great period of 80s space operas that are just so much fun to watch.
Yep. Now, interesting thing, now of course the whole thing is going to have, Japanese language track with optional English subtitles. One thing they noted, for only the first 20-something episodes are they going to have an English dub, which kind of tells me that they're probably going to to include the original U.S. renditions dub, which is pretty neat.
Yeah. That's really going to be a fun, fantastic release. Another good reason to give Discotek money.
Yes.
And another good reason for us to keep thinking, guys, there's a movie.
Yep.
A series of shorts. Hasn't seen a release in a long time. Maybe get on that.
But,
all of Mike's money.
Yes. But speaking of all of my money, you recall I think our first episode, actually, we brought this point up talking about DVD and Blu-ray just having tons of space on there, but for marketing reasons, they're not just going to fill it up. Well, this isn't anything official yet, but Discotek did go out to the community and said, okay, look, we got some old licenses, mostly from the 70s and early 80s. There's no point to us, up converting it to 1080p HD. So, instead of getting a normal disc, would you like it if we put together a Blu-ray that it's just us throwing the entire series on one disc? And this was met with a resounding, shut up and take our money.
And this was discussed in their forums. And if you're not yet a member of their forums, then either join or simply email or write to Discotek Media and let them know, yes, I want a complete series on one disc, and by the way, could you also license Robot Carnival?
Yes. Yep.
We figure if everyone who watches this show sends even just that email to Discotek, they will at least notice.
Yes. Yes. We have a movement going. Let us keep it going. And speaking of fighting the man, I
Yes.
think that brings us to our main topic.
Also, speaking of movements, am I wrong? I'd like to bring up what is actually a pretty good book. It's one I purchased recently. It's called Anime Zatai. And Anime Zatai is a really nice book in that it's 100 small synopses, essays basically, on 100 different anime series, A to Z, that are considered significant to the forum. It dates fairly recently, actually. I'd say about 2005, 2006.
Somewhere around there.
And covers a lot of great bases. I mean, granted, a lot of the recent stuff that's really made waves isn't in Zatai, but it's a good book. It's got a lot of info that I found really interesting. But there's also some opinion in there, and there's a particular opinion in there that Mike and I are going to, in the next segment, dispute regarding Bubblegum Crisis. Stay tuned. We have things to say.
So, one of the guys who wrote this, Brian Camp, as well as, was it Julie Davis?
Yeah, Julie Davis was the co-author.
Right. One day they got together and they were smoking all the crack.
We don't generally like to cast aspersions here, but when you're this wrong about something, we have something to say.
Yep.
And we have to hypothesize as to how an individual could be this wrong.
Yep.
Because it is wrong.
It's blatantly...
And the only way we could really go off on how wrong is by taking a few excerpts and trying to keep it as complete as we could.
Yep.
So that you get the full context. We don't want to take anything out of context here.
Nope.
To show you what Mr. Camp and Miss Davis apparently feel about the Bubblegum Crisis franchise. Most specifically, the part of the franchise that is probably the most significant, the only reason why anyone ever got interested in the franchise, and really one of the cornerstones of American anime fandom in general.
Without a doubt, yeah.
And
This is one of the first ones I ever saw.
And then, of course, is the Bubblegum Crisis OAV. So, here's where it's going to play out. I'll show you a bit of the text. We'll tell you what we feel.
Yep.
Hopefully you feel the same as us.
Remember, here at Maison Otaku, you are entitled to our opinions. Well, I mean, yeah, that's more or less how it went down. I mean, the only thing I would detract from that is the only.
Yeah, that's a little difficult to determine, but Animego was right there at the forefront. They and Streamline were the cutting edge of VHS distribution for anime. And in truth, it was so early an experience for most of them. It was number 3 on my experience.
Yeah, it was one of my first, like, 2 or 3 that I saw.
Yeah. And it can't really be beaten as a memory because that whole introductory sequence with Koniwa Hurricane playing and everything's exploding, and you've got the rock and roll chick on stage with the big blonde hair. Exciting.
Yep.
This was an exciting introduction to anime for anyone.
It gave you a whole rundown of this is what's going to go down. Expect more. But the thing is, it's like You know, one of the first big sci-fi movies I ever saw was Star Wars. Does that make Star Wars any less of a great film? Just
No.
because, you know, yeah, one of the reasons I love it is because it was an early part of my life, but it has, you know, stands on its own merits quite well, and I definitely think that's the case with the Bubblegum Crisis OVA, as we will discuss.
Yes.
You know, it's really not a good idea to start a critique of something by mentioning everything that makes it good.
Yeah. Over-the-top mecha action is what Bubblegum Crisis brought to the table. It was the selling point.
And 80s design work, I'm sorry, the 1980s was anime's golden age.
Yes.
80s design is synonymous with quality.
Yes. Macros, Do You Remember Love?
Oh god, yeah.
Akira.
Mm-hmm.
And can you really criticize something for being of its time?
Yeah.
Nobody sits down and says, well, you know, Citizen Kane was an all-right movie, but it would probably have been better if it had been made in 1994.
Yep. Well, and that's a point I want to talk about really briefly here. People often call a lot of this stuff dated. There is a difference between being, well, as he worded, of its time and being dated.
Yes.
Bubblegum Crisis OVAs, definitely of its time. Let's
But
see.
then you would say something along the lines of, I don't know, the film Splash
Yeah.
would be
Dated.
dated,
Mm-hmm.
where not only does it not speak to anything other than, well, this is the moment in time in which it's capturing,
Yep.
but it's so buried in its own time that you couldn't possibly enjoy it looking back upon it.
Nope.
You don't tone down the most interesting thing about the series. Bubblegum Crisis is all about the over-the-top mecha action. That's why we like it. That's what we want.
It's kind of a difficult one to touch here. I mean, yeah, you can say, you know, Ghost in the Shell, arguably Pat Labor, and Akira are more sophisticated anime, but did Bubblegum Crisis really pave the way for them? I mean, like Ghost in the Shell a little bit, but Akira and Pat Labor don't really deal with too much of the same material.
No, Akira's really much more about the society that spawns such creations, not really dealing with technology run amok as it is social structure run amok.
Which is important in Bubblegum Crisis, but that's like its one connecting thread.
Yeah. Pat Labor is about how the future is going to be just as mundane as the present, if you really want to break it down to its central
Sort of
message.
the antithesis of Bubblegum Crisis.
Right. Bubblegum Crisis is about a future that is a dystopian future. It has fallen apart. Pat Labor is a very functioning universe.
Yeah, well, and it's not even a future, it's an alternate past at this point.
Yeah.
It takes place in the late 90s.
And then we get to Ghost in the Shell and the associated Masamune Shirow works.
Yeah.
Can we really say that one Shiro work is more sophisticated than the other?
Well,
a little bit.
Well, we can, but I mean, it's like, I understand, you know, praising Ghost in the Shell, but I really wouldn't say that, you know, the other stuff that they mentioned is significantly less sophisticated, and it's definitely not any less sophisticated than Bubblegum Crisis.
No, believe me.
Yeah.
I love Dominion Tank Police. It is one of my all-time favorites. It's occupying the exact same headspace as Bubblegum Crisis. And I can definitely tell that they're somewhat confused using the Oshi film for Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah.
Not to take anything away from the Oshi film. The Oshi film is a landmark. It's a monument to everything anime can be. But it's not Ghost in the Shell, baby.
Yeah, Shiro is Shiro.
Shiro is Shiro. Shiro is awesome with a screw loose.
But that's another episode.
Yes.
We can agree that Bubblegum Crash was a 3-episode spin-off OVA, but that's about it.
Yeah. It's Crash.
Yep. The f***? I'm seriously baffled by this.
Yeah. Is there anything worse these people could possibly say? My mistake.
Clearly. I think I'm starting to get inside these people's heads. These are the kind of unimaginative, uninspired twits that anime and entertainment in general in the late 90s was made for and probably by.
I'm getting that distinctly... I am getting that distinctly neon colors and no detail vibe from this book. Folks, just because a character says more things about how they feel does not necessarily mean they are better characterized or that they've got more going on. Yeah. It just means they've said more things.
Yeah. And honestly, I want to point out something here that's very important to point out about Tokyo 2040. Yes, one thing it did right was giving the characters greater backgrounds and showing more of the character interactions. Problem, not only did it up their personalities beyond all recognition, but despite giving them more depth, the characters are more generic stereotypes than ever.
Yeah, there's...
You have, well, let's see, Pris, very complex character in the original. She's tough. She definitely has some soft spots, though. She's independent without being, crazy or man-hating. In Tokyo 2040, she's a straight-up bull dyke.
Yes. And it's very unusual to contrast, because if you read the full of Zatai, they go into a lot how Lina is brought to the fore in 2040, which is a mistake.
Yes.
Because Pris was interesting. Pris was fun. The rock and roll singer who's a badass robot superhero in the spare time, that's a great character. That's a character that's up in the pantheon.
And they screwed up Lina anyway. Not only should she not be the main character, they changed her job, which doesn't sound like much, but in the original, she started off as an aerobics instructor. That tied in with her role as the close combat specialist of the group. You make her some generic office lady and give her a hard suit that isn't even specialized, and you make her pointless, making her an even worse choice for the main character. Not to mention, her character is more generic than ever. She's just Jane Doe Japanese girl in Tokyo 2040.
Right. Pris was groundbreaking.
Yep.
She was deep-voiced. She was raspy. She swore. Pris moved female characters as far forward in anime as Cutie Honey moved them forward in the 70s.
Right.
And do not mistake for a moment that Cutie moved the bar forward if you're about to argue that with me. Because Cutie was one of the few, and remains one of the few anime characters who is actually in control of her own sexuality without playing it for cheap control.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
But that's a whole other episode right there. But I mean, let's talk about the other characters. Nene, yes, that's sadly the one that stays most true to the original, but they took the bubbly, ditzy girl that was kind of just an underlying tone of her character, and that's all she is in 2040. Cilia.
Cilia is phenomenal in the
Yeah,
OAV.
okay, she is, like a mature businesswoman, probably has a dark past, but is generally in control. There's a reason she's in charge. She is not, I repeat, not a psychotic bitch.
Yeah. The whole idea of Cilia being this step close to a complete and utter breakdown doesn't work if she's leading a troop, a squad of combat specialists in active, ongoing combat in a protracted, no end in sight conflict.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Not without them all getting killed.
Yeah. And that's the problem. It made sense. All of these characters made sense. The fact that there was some humor to them as well is completely blown out. Any sense of, Cilia's humor at the fact that she's a little odd. Her business is a little odd. Her brother's a little odd.
Oh god, let's not get started on f***ing Maki.
Oh.
You know what? No, let's talk about Maki. We need to f***ing talk about what they did to Maki. Yes, he was never the greatest character, but he was likable. He had a purpose.
Yeah, drive the truck, look at the boobs.
Yes.
I'd like that job.
Wouldn't we all? But in Tokyo 2040, not only did they split his character into two parts, so where the teenage boy part of him is still Maki, and then the useful mechanic moves along the plot is now this guy named Nigel, who aside from what he does for the group has no purpose and is about as two-dimensional as the main character from Watch Dogs. But on top of that, they turned Maki into Shinji. There's no two ways about it. They turned Maki into Shinji, which makes it all the more appropriate that ADV had Spike Spencer voice him.
Yeah. This whole thing, if I could actually draw a parallel between the two, and I think I can, Bubblegum Crisis, the OAV, represents everything Anime-Go brought to the table in the 80s.
Yep.
This vibrant, excited perspective on this relatively new to us art form that the company was eager to share with everyone.
Yeah, it was...
Share all of the things it could possibly offer.
Yeah, it was literally the little kid running through the neighborhood going, You guys! Oh my god, you guys!
And 2040 is everything ADV brought to the table, which is this bizarrely cynical, read the market and give them what they want, and nothing more, coldness.
Yeah. Which was all too typical of anime of the late 90s. Like they were talking about, more detailed. More detailed my ass.
Have you seen the line drawings from the classic?
Tokyo 2040 has the same bullshit generic art style that every other thing had from the late 90s. But it's done even worse. If I want to watch something with that art style, I'll watch f***ing Gasaraki.
We're actually going to propose a little challenge to you. We are going to put up a series of action shots. Some are going to be from Bubblegum Crisis 2040, a classic, according to Zatai. And some are going to be from Moldiver. If you could tell the difference, you get to rummage around in a box of Mike's choosing. Good stuff. But really art style complaints, really all these things that they level at the classic OAV brings us really to why Zatai gets Crisis so wrong.
Yep.
They talk about the way Mega Tokyo looks. They talk about the way the girls look. They talk about all these things that are so distinct and make the show what it is as being problems. And I dare say, and Mike, I want you to back me up on this, but I don't need to ask you to, that their problem, their whole problem with Bubblegum Crisis is that it's not Evangelion, that it is Dirty Pair, that it's not Serial Experiments Lane, that it is Crusher Joe.
Yep. Yeah, I reiterate, this is the kind of unimaginative dribble made by and for the equally unimaginative people of the late 90s.
Yes. And we're not down on the late 90s as this big wasteland void.
No, that's the 2000s.
Close to, yeah. Because you do get your Bubblegum. You do get your Cowboy Bebop.
Mm-hmm.
You get
your Outlaw Star, Trigun. Like I said, it was kind of hit and miss, but we'll count Gasaraki among them. It was A for effort on that one, if nothing else.
08th MS Team.
8th MS Team, yeah.
Absolute best of
that's my third favorite Gundam series.
Yeah. It was a great time, and the exploration of what could be done with computer animation, with digital animation, was good.
Some of it.
Some of it. We had some really rough patches, like Queen Emeraldas.
Well, it was great, but yeah, if you can talk shit about the CGI all you want in that one.
Yeah, and I do. I love the show. Yeah, I love that two-part OAV. But good God, every time I see that CGI Queen Emeraldas, this little part of me goes... But how can you prosecute Bubblegum Crisis for being a fun, exciting, music-laden romp through the exact scenery that it wants to celebrate, which is that fantastic dystopia that we see in Blade Runner, that we see in all the works of Ridley Scott.
I mean, yeah, it's especially now, and I do know for a fact that these were direct influences on it. Some Japanese people got together and like, hey, you ever see like Blade Runner and Streets of Fire? Let's do that.
Yes, and they did that. And the list of guys to come out of that. Kenichi Sonoda did the character designs and went on to do Gunsmith Cats.
Yep.
Shinji Aramaki.
Still going, I might add. Just directed the most recent Captain Harlock film, which looks freaking awesome. I can't wait to finally see that.
Yeah. Aramaki's done just about everything that's awesome. I mean, including the Ghost in the Shell TV series, Standalone Complex, which is wonderful. And the Appleseed movies. All the Appleseed movies. I mean, the man handles the property, he loves the property. And you just keep going through the list. And this was all their start. This was their first chance. And what did they want to do? They wanted to take robots, put them in the world of Blade Runner, let them run amok, and then have beautiful women beat up the robots.
Yes.
All while some hard rock played.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's... Well, and sorry. I won't get into this because it's a whole other episode there too, but there's this one American cartoon I like called, what the heck was it? Star Chaser, The Legend of Orin. And I won't go into it, but the most common criticism I hear of it is, well, it's too much like Star Wars. And I'm sorry, but criticizing a fantasy action adventure for being too much like Star Wars is a bit like asking us to paint a mural in your bathroom and saying, no, I'm sorry, those angels are a bit too much like something Botticelli would do. You're criticizing something for perfectly doing what it's supposed to be doing. And you're quite welcome to say, well, I don't like that sort of thing, but that should be your criticism, not, oh, it fails because of these things.
Right.
Well, since we didn't have a full episode last week, it's still Justin's turn to make a recommendation, and as always, he picked a pretty interesting one.
I kind of had to pick this one because I'm in a fighting mood with everything that Zatai had to say about Bubblegum Crisis. So,
yep.
What better fighting anime that goes on for way more episodes than reasonably possible than not Dragon Ball Z, assholes!
Gotcha.
Fist of the North Star. Look at this man. Look at how violent this man is. Fist of the North Star was created because its creator liked Road Warrior and liked Bruce Lee movies.
Yep.
That's a hell of a genealogy for something that's going to be exciting and violent. And he said, okay, vast wasteland, kung fu hero, he's going to wander across the wasteland punching people. That's not that's not an oversimplification. That's the synopsis.
Series.
That is episode 1 through 100 in a nutshell. Ken wanders across the wasteland punching people. And their heads explode. And it's bloody, it's violent, it's angry. And it's so much fun, and it's really very well animated. It's psychotically detailed.
Oh yeah. If you were a fan of Ryuichi Ikegami, much the same artwork in here.
And you'll enjoy it a lot. If you like Berserk, you'll see a lot of the same work there. If you like Golgo 13, you're gonna like Fist of the North Star. If you want something to kind of graduate from because you like long shonen series, it's a great next step. Fist of the North Star is so much fun because it doesn't try to be anything other than a good, violent half hour.
Yep. Yeah, it's if you like violence, Jack.
Fist of the North Star. If you like anything by Go Nagai,
yeah,
you'll like Fist of the North Star. I cannot think of a reason why you shouldn't pop over to Hulu, because it is on Hulu, and watch the original series and just enjoy a couple half hours of just this frenetic energy channeled into fists and feet.
Yep.
And if this isn't enough for you, if you're kind of under the impression, well, okay, I enjoy that. There are some great films.
Yep. Well, don't watch the HBO movie. It's worse than it sounds.
Yes, there is a live action film that was done by HBO. It's not all that good, despite the fact that it had wasn't it Rutger Hauer was in it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, the man who played Roy Batty from Blade Runner, which ties in well with today's topic, is in it, and it's not all that great.
But yeah, the movie put out by Streamline, great movie. I love that thing. Series of video games put out. It's basically, if you like Dynasty Warriors but wish it was more Mad Max,
play Fist of the North Star. You can play what you see, and it's pretty expertly rendered. The whole of the game is a lot of fun. Bit mindless, but that works.
Well,
in
it's
this
Dynasty
content.
Warriors.
And you keep going with it. There have been a couple of recent series.
Yeah, I actually really liked the recent one.
Yeah, the recent series are fantastic too.
Like,
and
you
they
want
go into side characters.
Yeah, you want to talk about like newer anime that I love? I was very pleasantly surprised by that.
And the manga is also a lot of fun when you can find it. There was not only Fist of the North Star, but there was on Blue Star or something like that.
It's something like that, yeah.
Another good read, despite the fact that I'm completely blanking on it. But I cannot recommend Fist of the North Star enough if you want some good combat anime. If you really feel like you're just pushed a little too far and you need something to just let go with, it's a good one. It is a great dystopian wasteland fantasy, just like Gun Frontier.
Once again, no, screw it. I'm sorry. I have to say Fist of the North Star is better.
I think we might have to say that Fist of the North Star is
not better than Leiji Matsumoto himself is superior to Fist of the North Star.
Yes.
Yes, but not Gun Frontier.
But not Gun Frontier on its own. So, having wrapped up on that point, that Leiji Matsumoto himself is superior to something.
Yes.
We're going to call this a night with you.
Yep.
But we will want to say Thank you again for staying tuned.
Yep.
We hope we've sparked a little bit of controversy, despite the fact that, in all seriousness, Anime Classics Zettai is a really good book.
Yeah,
It's got so much good information in it.
And I do want to say, Tokyo 2040, it's not absolute shit.
No.
I would rather watch Tokyo 2040 than most of the garbage that's been put out in the past decade and a half. Not all of it, but most of it. But the original OVA still blows it out of the water, is the point we're trying to make.
Yes. And we cannot emphasize that enough. So, from all of us here at Maison Otaku,
This is Mike,
and Justin, saying enjoy what you watch.
and share what you enjoy.